Psychology of identification. There are many things that can interfere with your intentions to transform your life. There are many ways in which one can fall back asleep. The difficulties man has in maintaining his efforts to remember himself are the manifestations of lying, imagination, the expression of negative emotions, and unnecessary talking. It only shows man's utter mechanicalness and impossibility even of struggling against his mechanicalness without help, that is, without new knowledge and without actual assistance. All these forms of falling asleep have a certain definite feature of its own, unknown or at least unregistered and unnamed in ordinary psychology. The more reason that this definite feature needs special study. The main feature driving all expressions of negative emotions, sleep, and mechanicalness is identifying or identification. Identification is a curious state of being in which man passes almost all of his life. He identifies with almost everything, with what he says, what he feels, what he believes, what he does not believe, what he wishes, what he does not wish, what attracts him, what repels him. Everything absorbs him, and he cannot separate himself from the idea, the feeling, or the object that absorbed him. When man is identified, he is not capable to look impartially on the object of his identification. It is really hard to find something which man is not identified. As a young child, we think that the whole world revolves around us. Everything that is there for us. Everything that happens because of us. We project everything that happens unto ourselves, take blame for all the bad, and create very powerful and sometimes very reactive narratives out of it. We feel we are the center of the world only because we haven't yet learned that we are identified with everything that happens and occurs in our world. In a state of identification, man has no control over his mechanical reactions as lying, imagination, the expression of negative emotions, and constant talking. They all need identification and cannot exist without it. Although the phenomena has already been acknowledged in ancient esoteric teachings, no trace of understanding of it can be found in modern psychology. If man could get rid of identification, he could get rid of many useless and foolish manifestations. Identification can also rear its ugly head by being overly concerned about what other people might think of you, whether they give you your due, whether they admire you enough, whether they like you, whether they approve you, and so on and so on. The sleep-producing state, which is a strong form of identification, is called internal considering. Internal considering is your identification with other people. It is a state of sleep in which man constantly worries about what other people think of him.
Internal considering plays a very important part in everyone's life, but in some people it becomes an obsession. All their lives are filled with considering, that is, worry, doubt, and suspicion about other people, and there remains no place for anything else.
A great deal of the psychological problems people are suffering today are often nothing more than strong states of identification. The myths of the inferiority complex and other complexes are often created by the vaguely realized but not understood phenomenon of identification and internal considering. Sometimes people are even identified with their psychological condition itself. They are that condition instead of having that condition. That is the essence of identification. You actually become what you are identified with, and in that moment you are trapped, locked, and have no freedom of thought, emotion, or action whatsoever. You are a machine. The only thing you can do is realize that you are identified, and that in fact, like stated many times before, you are but a machine.
Both identifying and considering must be observed most seriously. Only full knowledge of them can diminish them. If one cannot see them in oneself, one can easily see them in other people. But one must remember that one in no way differs from others. In this sense, all people are equal.